Well, it's on that note I have joining me with me to put this into perspective. I have with me Andrew Mevin, who is Chief Economist from the PricewaterhouseCoopers to put insights into this. Thank you for joining us on the show.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, let's start this way. You've seen the figures. I've reeled most of them out. And at the moment, we stand at 18.55% with all of this. What do you think is responsible for this upward trend?
Well, I think that we all understand what's going on with the exchange rate and the pressures on the exchange rate. So we didn't diversify the economy, and oil price is high. Oil price collapsed. Our production volumes went down. So we didn't have enough foreign exchange. And of course, every product that we produce here has some foreign content and some local content. So as that moves through the system, it just keeps driving the inflation up and up and up. And of course, if the exchange rate continues to deteriorate, then we're going to see these numbers that could possibly continue to accelerate the inflation numbers.
You know, some of the components I noticed they're talking about housing, electricity, gas price, and some of those other things are responsible for this. I think. Is there any interconnection between this and the forex crisis?
Yes, because I mean, even things that we produce locally, everything's got some content that they're importing. So, for example, when you in the gas business, you have the generators, gas generators, turbines. All of that equipment has to be imported. So we have our own gas here, but to make the gas valuable to us, we need some imported content. So what's happening now is that all players in the economic system are rebalancing. They want to use more local content and less foreign content, but they still need some foreign content. And as the exchange rate deteriorates, that's what's driving up their prices. So getting the exchange rate under control is a big step to be able to tame the inflation.
Talking about diversification, which you mentioned in the first submission, now government is doing all in its power to try to reactivate our agricultural sector, at least to make agriculture now become a business. That is what I think the government is looking at. But we still have some challenges, infrastructure and all of that. What do you make of government's efforts so far? Are we actually in a step in the right direction?
Well, I think there's been a big change over the last 12 to 18 months. I mean, I think 2-3 years ago, people said diversification, but they didn't really believe it or take any actions. I think 2016 has scared us all enough to realize in Nigeria that we have to do this for real. So I think everyone is now genuinely committed to diversification. And I know from our business, we see lots of entrepreneurs that want to do things. I think what the government needs to do at this point is just make it easier to do business, easier for Nigerians, easier for foreigners to come and do these things. And we continue to rank very low in the ease of doing business. So, we're 169th. Number hasn't improved in the last couple of years. It needs to start improving. And it's not like the business community, it doesn't need to see it go from 169 to 50. It just needs to see some steady improvements. And if we see that, then I think you'll see a lot more investment. And the investment coming in is going to help to solve this problem.
Investment coming in really becomes very important at this time. Analysts have also argued that, and even from reports we have, that the government needs to dip in reforms, economic policies that will really address some of those challenges. There's not been a synergy between the monetary side and the fiscal side. This has been purely identified. I don't know what you make of this.
Well, I think that, one big advantage that Nigeria has is it doesn't have much debt. Very low debt to GDP. So in fact, we can borrow, have some fiscal expansion, put some money in the economy. Obviously, this is a bit controversial right now with the Senate, between the Senate and the presidency. But the reality is, if we borrow and we do useful things with that money, we'll be very far ahead. The danger, of course, is if we borrow and we don't use the money wisely, or we waste the money, or the money's diverted, we're going to be in a worse position. But if we could take that money and build some roads, take that money and solve the issues in the power sector, improve security, those things will make it easier to do business. And in that case, I don't think, you said before the lowest inflation here was actually negative. That meant prices were going down. we all understand it's a very high-cost place to do business because of security, because of infrastructure, because you have to get your own diesel generator, et cetera. If we could address some of those issues, I think you'll see prices come down again. So instead of having 18.55% inflation, I could see it coming down in a good scenario where it's back to zero or negative inflation. Prices should be lower in Nigeria if we do the right things.
Indeed, and there comes to my mind again issues of interest rates. When you talk about entrepreneurs coming in, well, I know the forex issue is very important. It's very big, which needs to be tackled. Floating the rate hasn't actually worked for us at the moment. I think this is part of the confidence we need to build. Some have argued that more confidence needs to be built with regards to foreign investors coming into the country, because if they are not sure safety of their funds, how they would also get their funds back into their countries with regards to the forex crisis, they might still be skeptical. They might just be sitting on the fence, even it's affecting the capital market as we speak.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, it's not hypothetical. We see clients every day that are thinking about investing in Nigeria. And these are Nigerians as well as foreign companies, foreign entrepreneurs, that because of the exchange rate regime, they're not investing today. And we see it in the numbers. So the foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment in the stock market and Nigerian bonds, government bonds, has collapsed by about 75% since 2 years ago, because people, number of reasons, but one reason is because people don't quite understand the exchange rate. So what foreigners need and Nigerians need is not necessarily any particular exchange rate, but what they need is clarity. So they understand, because they understand they may be taking foreign exchange risk, but if I put my money out at X, at least I can get it out at Y. Now Y may be better or worse, but I'm prepared to take that risk. What I'm not prepared to do is put my money in an X and have the money trapped. That is just not going to work, and it's not working for us right now.
It is not at all. When we look at the way it is, it's not really working. Now I go back to the foreign exchange market, which is something that we really need to look at. Lately, the Bureau de Change operators, that's the BDCs, are coming out to say they will peg the price at least where they will be selling the currencies and all of that. But I don't see that as even addressing the situation. Many say until we start to export in large quantity. But Rome was not built in a day. Where do we start from?
Right, so this is where we go to. So if you look at the numbers, to get the balance in the exchange rate, we need a balance of suppliers and demanders of the currency, right? Right now it's an imbalance. So we need to get more supply of dollars. In the short term, we're not going to export very much, right? We may get a little bit of relief because oil prices have gone up. And God willing, if we could get production levels up, it'll give us a little bit more time. But to plug the gap over the next few years while we diversify, we need foreign dollars to come in to invest in the country. So if there's some clarity, they'll come in and they'll do that. And as I said, if we get a little bit of relief from the oil price and we get more clarity around the exchange rate regime, this could happen very quickly and turn around for us. We've got to do those simple things.
Two key issues here. Let's look at our budget too. Let's look at the performance of 2016, and now we're already projecting for 2017. A lot of expectations with regards to this budget, and just like you identified, the price of crude is coming back, and we hope we don't look away from diversification, because it's scary when lots of money start coming and will stabilize production. We could look out of diversification and go back to the oil receipts and spend money from oil. Our budget is the dollar per barrel is predicated on about 38 to 42, and we are doing about 50 something, 52 as of today. Do you see that actually making our budget more practically implementable? Because implementation has always been the challenge, proper implementation. Do you see us actually implementing perfectly with this price?
Well, I think, it's not going back up to 100, or very unlikely to that. So I think at 52, it'll give us a little bit of breathing room from a very difficult situation. 38, 42, still very tough. 52 gives us a little bit of breathing room. If the government can execute the projects, and part of that is execute the projects, and part of it is getting the money spent. What happened last year was that the government didn't spend enough money. It didn't get on to doing its projects, building the roads, investing in the infrastructure. People in the country need jobs. They need money to circulate. So the government needs to do that. Now, interest rates, you sort of say, well, why are interest rates so high? One reason interest rates are high is because the government's not collecting enough tax revenue. So they're having to borrow to plug this gap. Oil prices going up will help, but the government should be collecting better tax. We're the worst country in the world for collecting tax. In 2014, excluding oil and gas, we only collected a little bit over 2% of GDP in taxes. We should be collecting 10 to 12%. And if you collect that money, you're generally collecting tax money from people that are rich. They're not necessarily spending it, right? You're not taking it out of the economy. It wasn't being spent anyway. But if the government could do that, then interest rates would start to come down. The other part of interest rates is we're all part of the contributory pension scheme. So we've got nearly 6 trillion naira in pension funds. It's growing very rapidly. PENCOM's been very successful. 70% of that money buys Nigerian bonds. So that's a big pool of money, and the bigger that pool gets and the more they buy Nigerian bonds, interest rates will fall. So I see a way forward for interest rates, but a big part of it is getting the tax regime right. And you were saying before, you've got to get monetary policy and fiscal policy together, raising the tax money. So it's not increasing taxes, it's just collecting on the existing laws will make a huge difference to bringing interest rates down and making it a much better environment for business.
And Andrew, we're going to go on this break now. We're going to come back and talk more on the tax issue. It's very important because I know there's a tax review committee actually on the Nigerian government, and they've come out with their resolutions and all of that. You mentioned the issue of tax. It's been up and everybody's been talking about tax review policies and all of that in Nigeria. But I see what Nigerians, or what the argument has been, is we want to see what government will do with the ones they've been collecting. If we see that, yes, we have basic amenities, we'll keep paying. Is that the way it's done in other climes?
Well, I think there's always a social contract. So if you see services coming, you're going to be more willing to pay your taxes. In a situation sometimes in Nigeria where you're not getting any service and someone comes to collect a tax, that's going to make it more difficult. But as I said earlier, we have some room to borrow. So in fact, the government could do some things before it started to collect more tax and instill some confidence that people are getting value for money when they hand over their tax naira.
Spending our way out of recession is another thing that many people have advocated. And even lately, I spoke to the Director General of the Budget Office in the country, and he said, yes, government is going to spend on developmental projects to get out of recession. What process? How do you think this will work?
Well, I think that if the projects are executed successfully, it will work very well. So if we borrow some money to build some roads, we hire people, we put money in their pocket, they demand goods and services, they're getting paid regularly, and then there's a road, then we're all going to be better off. What's not going to work is if we borrow money and then we can't execute the project. And that's the big danger, because we've had experiences in Nigeria where either because funds were diverted or because it was not competently executed, we've borrowed money and haven't executed the project. But as I said a little earlier in the show, our debt level's so low, we're in the perfect position, if we can execute, to borrow some money and go out and do the projects that will make us more prosperous, better economy, more efficient, et cetera. And we all know what they are. They have to do with power, they have to do with infrastructure, and we have some partners that really want to support us. Obviously, the Chinese are very interested in lending us large amounts of money at concessionary rates. If we take it and do the right thing with it, we will be in a very good shape. But if we take it and do the wrong thing with it, we're going to end up worse off. That's the danger.
Finally, I know there are lots of outlooks for 2017. A lot of firms and organizations have been coming together, a group of experts to actually give what they expect of 2017. I don't know if you're going to speak for PwC here, but what's your outlook? What do you think of 2017? What's your expectation, or what's in your projection?
Well, what we're saying is what happens in 2017 and 2018 is under our control. It's under Nigeria's control. So IMF has come out and said Nigeria's growth rate this year will be 1%. 1% is dismal. I mean, we have a working age population that's growing at 3%. So if you're growing at 1% and your working age population is growing at 3%, we are still going backwards. That is a dismal outlook. We can improve it if we do the right things very rapidly. Everyone in the world's got their eyes on Nigeria. So if we make things a little bit easier to do business, we're going to start to grow very, very quickly on that. So I don't want to make a projection because that doesn't take into account what we do to do that. And I've said before, PwC said before, the country, if it was doing some good things, the right things, it would grow at 6 to 8%. I mean, China grew around that rate, higher than that rate for 30 years. We're in a position to do the same thing. So what I'd like to say is if we do a few of the right things, we can grow 3-4% this year. Maybe we can get to 6 or 8% next year. But that's not the numbers that are in the official forecast from the IMF, World Bank, other economists, because we haven't given the confidence that we're going to do the right things yet. But the potential is there.
Indeed, indeed. Ease of doing business seems to be very important here.
Yes, and I think the thing about ease of doing business is it's at the federal level, but it's also at the individual state level. So state governors need to realize, and I think they've been shocked by 2016, they're not getting any oil allocation money, they can't pay their civil servants, they can't execute their projects. So I think they've realized they need to do things to attract investment. I think one very bright spot for Nigeria is the way Lagos is leading the way. So the governor of Lagos is doing some very good things in ease of doing business. He's put it right at the center of his strategy. And it's working. And I think that there are other governors that are starting to look to what Lagos is doing. And if enough governors and states adopt it, we can see a big push forward. And every state has to figure out what it's going to do. Is it going to do solid minerals? Is it going to do agriculture? Is it going to produce power for manufacturing, textiles? I mean, each state's got to have a little bit different strategy. But the federal government's not going to bail the state out with a strategy. The state has to figure out where does it fit into the economic success of Nigeria.
Indeed, Andrew Mevin there, our chief economist from PricewaterhouseCoopers. I must thank you so much for your time on Business Nigeria.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Tolo.